You're listening to Moviesucktastic.
It all sounds like some bad movie.
Let's review Tank. I gotta bring this up, dude, because I just watched this last night. Do you remember Tank? Do you remember Tank?
The movie Tank.
The movie Tank. James Garner, 1984.
Oh, that was the one with Eddie Murphy?
No.
No, wait a minute. What the hell am I thinking of then?
You're thinking of Best Defense.
Well, you're right. That had a tank in it.
Right. I'm talking about.
You know what? It does sound familiar, and
it's a remake.
I just don't know why.
It's a remake of the 70s film What If They Threw a War and Nobody Came. It's James Garner plays a I forget what it's like, Sergeant Major General, whatever. He's on a military base in Georgia, and he owns his own tank. His family moves down there. One son's dead, the other one's with him. And he one night, and everyone loves the guy. He's a great guy. And so one night, James Garner he can't handle the disco music in the on base bar, so he goes to a local bar out of town. Mm-hmm. And if you watch these films from the 70s and 80s, and they're notorious for the townspeople not liking the military people. And so the deputy sheriff starts slapping around a prostitute that he was hanging out with, who's the girl that played Chrissy in the later seasons of Three's Company. And the assistant sheriff or deputy sheriff is James Cromwell, my favorite second-tier actor.
Okay.
And the tall, lanky guy. And he starts slapping the prostitute around. James Garner jumps to the defense of the prostitute and beats the snot out of him. And then the local sheriff, who's played, and what's his name again? Because he is awesome. It's he just died last year. G.D. Spradlin.
Oh, okay.
He played the president at the end of Long Kiss Goodnight. He's more evil than Hank Azaria in Roadhouse. He's fucking.
Wait. What did you call him?
Hank Azaria.
Hank Azaria. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
In Roadhouse, he's more evil than him. It's fucking amazing. He starts off as just like the manipulative sheriff.
Right.
And he finds out that this deputy sheriff's been beat up by a military guy. First thing he does is they go to the prostitute, who he's running, because he runs prostitutes. He's the sheriff of this Georgia town. He's an evil fuck. He makes her strip down and then spanks her with his belt.
Oh, really?
Right. Then he goes to the military base, try to get James Garner, and the black sergeant there who knows him, he calls him Sambo. Halfway, he's like talking to him, and like the kind of thing where his veiled threats to each other, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, he just throws a Sambo out. He's like, wait a minute, you can't do that. Hold on. It gets better. So the sheriff, since he can't get James Garner, he gets his son, who is C. Thomas Howell. You gotta love a C. Thomas Howell film in the 80s.
Right.
So he plants marijuana in C. Thomas Howell's locker, arrests him, bribes James Garner for $10,000, and tells him, just bring me the money. Don't go getting a Jew lawyer. I almost did a spit take. It's like he just keeps throwing this shit out. It's like, one of them Jew lawyers. Like, did he just say Jew lawyer?
You know what? I think he did.
You're breaking up on me.
What happened?
What's going on?
Is that better?
No. What's going on?
I'm just futzing with the video to try and get you in the shot with Titanic.
There we go. We're good now.
We're good now?
Yeah, I was getting feedback from whatever you were doing.
Oh.
So then but then the wife doesn't believe him. So she gets a Jew lawyer.
Yeah.
And then so the sheriff tells him, "Yeah, I'll take the 10,000, but now your son's still going to jail, and the 10,000 will guarantee his safety. I can't guarantee he ain't gonna get raped, but I can."
Raped.
I was like, "You gotta be fucking kidding!" It's just he's just the evilest son of a bitch. So, and then of course in the second half of the film, he takes his tank and breaks his son out, and then they travel cross country to get out of the state because the state's run by a madman.
This sounds so familiar.
It was big.
I think I've seen it. I think I've seen it.
You definitely saw the trailers. It was big when it came out in '84. Everyone was. I think it came in fourth in the box office opening weekend. It only made like 11 million. That's back in the '80s.
That's not bad.
That's not bad at all.
No, that's not bad for an '80s film. Sure.
But the weird thing was, it got an R rating, and they appealed it. And when you watch it at first, there's one fuck in the film.
Okay.
I think, and then there's a couple of goddams, and then a sprinkling of Jesus Christ, and then a Jew lawyer and a Sambo. But it's just every time the sheriff appears, he says something that just makes you like, really, they really were gonna push it that far? Fucking awesome. And they appealed it and got a PG instead of the R. And it's really weird that they didn't get an R. I just had to bring it up because that was, it's like a flashback to the '80s, and just it's like that kind of weird thing where it's like a kid's film, but you're talking about prostitution and people being raped in prison. But the kids want to see it because he's driving a tank around town. Well,
I'll tell you, and we brought it up last week too, and I think it had when we talked about the Hunger Games. I think the '80s were a little more lenient with the MPAA. The MPAA was more lenient with things. Excuse me. I just think they were.
They were and they weren't. Well, they were at first because they didn't horror films. They were lenient up for part of the '80s, so they didn't know what horror films were.
Right.
And they weren't really hip on it. So in the early days of the '80s, a lot of horror films squeezed by. The first Friday the 13th got through with an R rating, and when you watch it now, it never would have made it because there was a lot of blatant gore.
Sure.
And a lot of those horror films slipped through, and then once they realized what was happening, they like hit the brakes on that and reined back real hard, and then it became impossible to get any kind of violence in a horror film out there.
Right.
And then, of course, you had the double standard because you had more violence in action films than you did in horror films at that point, but the action films got a go-ahead. Just the kind of stuff that directors like Ridley Scott blatantly take advantage of, and then they piss and whine about it when it doesn't work their way anymore.
Yeah, true.
Whiny bitch. But I just had to bring it up because it's great, and it reminded me, and this is on streaming on Netflix.
Okay.
And it reminded me of another film, which just happens to also be on Netflix from the '80s. I think it's early '70s. It's probably '80s. Called Harry's War, and I have to go back and watch it.
Yeah, Harry's War. I remember that. Right? Oh, yeah.
And it's all about how evil the IRS is.
Yeah.
Because he ends up like waging war with the IRS because his grandmother like has all these old military relics in her, and so he pretty much blockades the house and like shoots IRS agents and stuff.
Right.
This wonderful time in the '80s where it was actually cool to hate your government and hate the police and everything.
Still kind of cool.
I had to bring them up because I try to keep a little more current sometimes with the movies I'm watching because I forget to bring them up. And if you get a chance to go back and watch Tank, man,
I'm gonna revisit it.
I mean, and the wife is Shirley Jones plays the wife from the Partridge Family.
Oh, Shirley Jones.
Yeah, she's like in bed with the nightie on. Whoa. It's one of those films where when you watch it now, literally every 10 minutes you're like, oh, he's in this. Oh, he's in it. It's just like everybody, even like people you can't even place right away.
Right.
Tank.
The
only I wish they'd remake Tank, only make it more violent. Like in the remake, modern day remake, he should actually sleep with the prostitute. The son should actually be a drug dealer. But the sheriff just oversteps the line, so he takes a tank, and instead of just like crushing cars and destroying buildings, he should actually be like cutting people in half with the machine. If you cross Tank with Rambo,
right?
Not First Blood, but Rambo, the last one,
right?
Cross those two, you've got a great like cult action film now, like '90s exploitation.
I'd see that in a heartbeat. Sure.
And the tagline could just be "One man, one justice, one big fucking tank."